In this video, I'm going to show you what is a function in Python and how to use functions in Python. So first of all, what is a function? So a function is a group of statements within a program that performs a specific task. Now functions can be of two types. One is built-in function and other is user-defined function. Built-in function, we have already seen that print is a built-in function, or for example input is a built-in function, or for example min is a built-in function, and so on. Now usually function does one task at a time. So you can see this print function only prints something. Whatever input you give here, it's going to print it. Input function takes some input from the user. Min function finds out the minimum out of some values. So a particular function do one task at a time. Now let's see how we can define a function. So to define a function, you use a keyword def and then you give the name of the function. So name of function, and after the name of the function you give these parentheses and you provide number of arguments or parameters. So for example arg1, arg2, arg3, and so on. So you can give any number of arguments to your function. Now after this ending parenthesis you give this colon, and then under this function signature you write some statements which you want to execute when this function is called. So for example, if you want to print something, you can print something, or if you want to calculate something, for example the product of 2 or 3 variables or a sum of 2 or 3 variables, you can do under this function declaration. So let's take an example of function and let's see how we can define a real life function. So I'm going to define a very simple function which is going to add two values. So I'm going to name it as a sum, and for example it takes two values. One is, let's say, arg1 and other is arg2, and then after the colon I want to add these two values. So I can just write print here, and then I can write arg1 plus arg2. So this is a very simple function which takes two arguments and then add these two arguments and print them. So this is how you declare a user-defined function. Now after declaring a function, you need to also call this function. So in order to call the function, you just use the name of the function and then you provide the arguments which is required by the function. So our function requires two arguments right now, arg1 and arg2. So we are going to provide these two values. Let's say I want to provide 15 as the argument 1 and I will provide 60 as the second value. Now let's run the code and let's see what happens. So when we run the code, you can see our function prints 75, which is the sum of these two values which we have provided as an argument to this function. Now also, if you remember, this plus operator you can also use to concatenate two strings. So I can use this sum function, and this time I'm going to provide, for example, hello as the first parameter and then world as the second parameter, and then I'm going to run the program and it's going to print hello world. In addition, we can provide two float numbers here. For example, I will provide 15.647 and the second argument I'm going to provide is 80.258, and this is also allowed. So I'm going to just run this code and it gives us the sum of these two values. So this function sum is doing one single task, which is to add two values, whether it's a string or it's a number or it's a float value. Now you may also observe that when I provide, for example, as a first argument I will provide a string and as a second argument I will provide a number here. Will this work? Let's see. So it's going to give us an error, and this error says can't convert int object to string implicitly. So this is a problem. So to solve this problem, we can provide here a simple condition, and we are going to check the type of both the arguments. So if type arg1 is not equal to type arg2, this should be arg1, not agr1. So let me just change this here. And if the type of arg1 is not equal to arg2, we are going to just use this keyword, which is return. So this return keyword is used to return something. So you can return, for example, 0 here or any string here. And when you write this return function without any value here, it's going to return nothing. But as soon as this return keyword is called, nothing after that will be executed. So even though you are returning nothing from here, then also this statement will not be executed. So whenever return is executed, after that all the statements which are under the return will not be executed. Also, we can print a message here that please give the args of same type. Okay, and let's run the code now, and you can see now it prints this message which says please give args of same type. So if these arguments are not of same type, whether it's an integer or a string or a float value, if the user provides first argument which is a string type and the second argument which is an integer type, then this condition will be true and this statement will be executed, which is going to print this message, and then return is called, and after this whatever statements are there will not be executed. So now, as I said, you can also return some values from a function, and here when you don't give any values after this return keyword, it's not going to return anything. But let's return the addition of two arguments using a return keyword. So I'm going to use this return keyword here, which is going to return the addition of these two values using this sum function. So now what will happen is, let's run the code once again, and you can see this sum is executed, this sum is executed, this sum is executed, but the result is not printed. So in order to get the result out of this function when it returns something, we need to save this return value in a variable. So let's save this value into a variable, and then you can use this variable to print the value of the sum. So I can do something like this. Also, you can directly enclose this sum function inside a print function, and then also it's going to print the sum of these two strings. So either you can assign the result of this sum function, which is returning the result, into a variable, or you can use directly this print function to get the result and print it. So I'm going to use print with other two functions also. So first print and the second print here, and let's run the code once again, and now you can see what happens. So first of all, it prints 75, which is the addition of these two numbers, which is returned by this sum function into a variable a, and we are printing the sum using this print function. Here in the next result, it prints hello world, because this sum function now returns the concatenation of these two strings. Similarly, this sum function is going to return the sum of these two float values. And in the last result, because the type of hello is not equal to the type of 15, then this message is printed because this condition is true in the last case, and then return will be called. And when this return is called, we were printing whatever is returned from the sum function, and you can see at last none is printed, because at last this sum function is returning nothing, because the type of these two arguments is not same, so we were returning without any value, and that's why none is printed here. Now there are few things to note here. Okay, so the first thing is you can define a function using def keyword and then the name of the function, and under these parentheses you provide the argument. So these two are called arguments. So this is an argument 1 and this is an argument 2. Also you can use alternatively the name parameters for these two arguments. So this is a parameter 1 and this is a parameter 2. Now it's possible to return from a function, like you can return the addition of two values, or it's also possible to return nothing from a function. So when you use return without a value, it's not going to return anything. Now when you use this function somewhere, it's called calling a function. Now at last, let's discuss about some of the benefits of using functions. So the first benefit is function makes your code simpler, because if you don't use function to execute this kind of code, then you need to write this code again and again whenever you want to use this functionality at different places. The second advantage is function makes your code reusable. So the same code is used to add two integer values, to concatenate two string values, to add two float values, and it's also used to give the error if you provide the arguments of different types. So that means you write the code once and use it multiple times, and that results in faster development of the code. So if you use a function, you can develop your code much faster than if you don't use a function. And the last but not the least advantage is when you declare functions, you can test and debug your code in a better way. So this is how you can declare and use functions in Python. We will discuss some more properties which are related to functions in Python. So let's get started. So to start with, I have a function called student which takes two arguments. One is name and other is age. And inside the function, we just simply print the value of name and age using the print function. And when we call this function with the name and age, it's going to print this kind of output. Now Python allows us to set the default value of the arguments. So after this name, you can put equals to symbol and then put the default value, whatever you want to set for the name. For example, if somebody doesn't provide any name, then you can just say unknown name. Similarly, we can set the default age here. Let's say default age is 0. If somebody doesn't provide any age with the student function, then the default value will be 0. Now instead of using this student function like this, let's say I don't provide any argument to this student function, and let's run the code. And you can see if I don't provide any argument to this student function, the default values are taken. So the default values are used when you want to make sure that every argument in your function should have some value. Now let's say I just provide a name here and don't provide the age, and let's run the program. And now you can see the name is overwritten by the argument what we have provided here, right? So default value will be this one if no argument is provided. Similarly, if we give the value of age and now we run the program, the default age is replaced by the age which is provided using the arguments. So this is how you can use default values with the arguments of the function. So let me just remove these default values, and I'm going to give you the next example, which is variable length arguments. So let's say with the name and age, I want to provide the list of scores which this student has scored for different subjects. So as a third argument, I'm going to provide an argument called marks, and somehow I want to provide a list of marks which is scored by this student, and let me print the value of marks using this print function also. Now in Python you can use asterisk in front of your argument, and this means that you can provide multiple arguments when you use this kind of notation. So let's just provide, for example, we already provided the name and age here, and let's provide different marks scored by this student. So I can provide 95 for first subject, then 70 for second subject, then 80 for next subject, then 50 for next subject. And let's say we don't know how many subjects the student has taken, we just have only the information about these 4 subjects which he has taken. So we can provide 4 values here, and then let's run the code. And now you can see name is Tom, age is 22, and the value of marks is shown as a tuple. Okay, so whenever you provide this asterisk in front of an argument, you can provide the values for that argument using normal arguments as you provide for normal argument. So first 2 variables are associated with name and age, and all the other variables which you provide here will be assigned to this marks variable because it has this asterisk in front of it. So now you can also use a for loop in order to iterate over tuple. So x in marks, for example, and then you can print every value, or you can access every value inside this tuple. And let me comment this print function, and let's run the code once again, and you can see for loop has printed all these marks which are there inside the list. Now if you want to use this type of variable length argument, then I will suggest you to use this argument as the last argument of your function, so that it will be clearer to the reader of the function that whatever you provide at the end will be the part of this last argument. Now you may ask that we have provided these marks for this student, but for which subject these marks are given to the student? Now in Python you can also use double asterisk in front of your function argument, and this means that now you can provide the key value pairs as a marks arguments. So instead of using 95, I can also say that 95 is scored in English, let's say, and then 70 is scored in math, and then let's say 80 is scored in physics, and the 50 marks is scored in biology. So now when you use these double asterisks in front of your function argument, you can provide these kind of key value pairs which are separated by this equal to symbol. And how you can access these values, so let's run the code and let's see what happens. And now you can see only keys are printed and not the values of these subjects are printed. So let's first uncomment this print function and let's see what type of value we are getting. So whenever you use these double asterisks, the values are given to you in the form of a dictionary. Okay, so if you use single asterisk, the values are given to you in the form of tuple. But whenever you use these double asterisks and whenever you try to access this variable, then this variable will be of type dictionary. And you already know how to print the values of dictionary. So you can just write marks.items here, and then here you can just write key comma value, and then you can print the value of key and value. So I'm going to just print key first of all, and then I'm going to just give a space here, and then I'm going to print the value, right? And now when we run the code, it will give me first of all the key, for example English, math, physics or biology, and the value which is 95, 70, 80 or 50. So how to use Lambda functions in Python? In addition, I'm going to show you how to use Lambda functions with functions like map, reduce, and filter. So let's get started. So as we all know that Python is a multi-paradigm language and it also supports functional programming. And the Lambda functions falls into functional programming paradigm. So what are Lambda functions and how to use Lambda functions? So Lambda functions in Python are also called anonymous functions because they don't have any name. Sometimes they are also called one-line functions because they can be written in a single line of code. So let's see how we can define a Lambda function. So as you can see here, I have three normal functions defined here. One is the double functions, which doubles whatever arguments you provide here. Second is a simple addition function, and third function is the function which takes three arguments and provide the product of the three arguments which are provided. So let's see how we can convert these three functions into the Lambda functions. So the first function which we have is the double function. So I'm going to once again write double as a variable, and then I can use a special keyword called lambda to create a Lambda function. So as you can see here, this double takes one argument which is x. So to provide an argument in the Lambda function, you just write the name of the argument, and then after the colon you write the body of the function. So in our case, this double function have this body which is return x multiplied by 2. So in Lambda function, if you want to return some value, you don't need to use this return keyword. You can directly write x multiplied by 2 here. So this Lambda function is equivalent to this double function, which is a normal function. So this double function takes one argument which is x, which we are providing here, and it returns the multiplication of x by 2, which we are writing after the colon. Now let's write the add function using Lambda function. So I'm going to once again declare a variable called add and once again use Lambda, and this time this add takes two arguments. So I can provide multiple arguments in Lambda functions by comma as you do with the normal functions. So I will provide two arguments, and then after the colon you just write whatever you want to return. So we want to return x plus y, so we can simply write x plus y here, and that's it. So in a single line we can define the Lambda function. Now the third function we want to provide here is the product function. So I will declare a variable product, and this time I just need to provide three arguments using the comma separator, and after the colon I just provide the multiplication of these three values, which is x multiplied by y multiplied by z. So all these three normal functions is equivalent to these Lambda functions. So I'm going to just comment these three functions out by pressing Ctrl and /. And now let's see how to use these Lambda functions. So you create a Lambda function and then assign the result into some variable, and then you use these variable as you use the normal functions. So I'm going to just use print to call the double variable, and then using the parenthesis I just provide the argument which this Lambda function takes. So this Lambda function takes one argument which is x, so I can provide the value of x here. So let's say I want to provide 10 as the value of x. Same I will do with the add function and the product function. So add function takes two argument and the product function takes three argument. So I can simply write these functions like this, like a normal function, and then I can just run my script, and you will see it's going to give us the same result as the normal function gives us. So the first is the double of 10, second is the addition of these two numbers, and third is the product of these three numbers. Now you might ask a question that these functions which we have defined normally, we can also define these functions in a single line because there is not much logic inside these functions. So we can declare these functions like this, and they are also the single line functions. So why do we use lambda functions? So the lambda functions are generally used with the functions which takes function as an argument or returns function as the result. So in functional programming, functions are the first class citizens. That means we can pass the functions as the normal argument. So as you can see here, we have passed some static or constant value as an argument here. But we can also pass the functions as an arguments, and in addition, you can also return a function from a function. So instead of this multiplication, you can create a function and return from a function. And that's where these lambda functions are useful. So let me give you some examples of where you can use lambda functions. So as I said, you can use lambda functions with the functions like filter, reduce, and map. So let me illustrate how these functions work. So I'm going to declare a list of some numbers. So now I have created a list which have these 6 elements. Now let's see how to use a map function with a lambda function. So there is an inbuilt function called map in Python which takes 2 arguments. One is a function and second is an iteratable variable, and we all know that collections like lists or tuples or the dictionaries are all iteratable collections. So we can use map keyword, and then here we can define a lambda function. So let's say I want to double each and every element of this list. So I can define a function which takes one argument x, and then we are going to return the double of this value. So this is the function which we have passed to this map function, because the first argument which map expects is the function. The second is the iteratable collection, so we are going to pass this list as the second value. Let me define, let's say, my list here so it will be more clearer. So I'm going to just pass this my list as the second variable. So what this map function is going to do is it's going to apply this lambda function to each and every element of this list, which is basically going to double the value of each and every element of the list. Now let's assign the result of this map function into a variable. So I'm going to assign the result into some variable, and then I'm going to print the result first of all. So this variable contains the map function. So let's see first of all what is the result, and then I'm going to show you how to get the result which we are expecting. So you can see here, whenever you want to print the value of map, it's going to just give you this kind of result. So how we can get the list out of this map value? In order to get the list out of this map value, you need to cast this value into a list. And how to convert this value into a list? You use a list function and then pass the result of the map function as an argument of this list function. Let's run the program once again, and you will see now that the result is a list, and in the result every element of the list is doubled. So basically what this map function has done is it has applied this function to each and every value of the list, and this function just doubles each and every value of the list. Now you might say that this is a very simple function which we are applying to the list. So let's make things little bit complex, and let's say now I have two lists. one is my list 1 and other is my list 2, and this other list contains some other set of elements. So let me just change the values which this second list contains, and let's say using this map function I want to add each and every element of these two lists and create a third list with the addition of, let's say, 2 and 1 and 5 and 4, 8 and 7, 10 and 8, like this. So how can I create a map function to achieve this? So let's say this is a variable b, and here inside the lambda function we give the second argument, which is y, so it takes 2 arguments, and then it adds the value of x and y. So we can do like this, and then as the second argument we are passing the first list, and also as the third argument you can pass the second list here. So now what this map function is going to do is it's going to take the first element of the first list and the first element of the second list, and then it's going to apply this function to the first elements of both these lists, which is to add these two numbers. So let's see what is the result which we get using this map function. So I'm going to just convert the answer or the result into a list, and then I'm going to just pass this b variable as an argument of this list, and then we are just printing the result. So let's run the code and let's see what happens. So you can see we get the list which adds the value of these two lists and creates a new list. So you can see 2 plus 1 is 3 here, 5 plus 4 is 9, then 8 plus 7 is 15, and so on. So this is how you can use lambda functions with map function. Now let's see how to use a filter function. So I'm going to use this special function which is called filter, and this filter functions takes 2 arguments. But what is special about this filter function is it takes a function as the first argument which gives us a Boolean result. So instead of adding 2 numbers and returning, this filter function is expecting a function which gives us the Boolean result. So let me minimize this. So let's say we want to filter the even values from this list. So how we can achieve this using the filter function? So as I said, this takes a function as the first argument, so you can use lambda. And how to find out the even values? You pass an argument and then you return x modulo 2 is equal to 0. So this x modulo 2 is going to give us 0 whenever the number is even, otherwise it's going to give us 1. So this is the first argument, and the second argument we can pass here is, for example, the first list here. And now I'm going to assign the result into a variable, and let's print the value of c now using the list function. So list, and as an argument I'm going to pass c here. Let's run the code and let's see what's the result. And you can see you just get the even values filtered out from this first list, which is 2, 8 and 10. Now let me give you one more example of filter. So let's say you want to filter out from the second list which values are greater than 5. So all the values which are greater than 5 we want to filter out. So we will pass x as an argument, and let's say this is the d variable. So this lambda function takes x as an argument, and it's going to return true. So let me just write the syntax here. So it's going to return true if the value of x is greater than 5. Else it's going to return the false. So else we can just write false here. So if you want to write if and else condition inside a lambda function, you write something like this. So this is the syntax of if and else. So if the value of x is greater than 5, it's going to return true, otherwise it's going to return false. So let's run this code and let's see what happens. Let me just replace this c by d, and I'm going to run this file, and you will see the result here. So in this list you will see 8, 10 and 9 are greater than 5. That's why we got this result. If we write here greater than and equal to, and once again run the code, it's going to give us 4 values including 5 here. So this is how you can use filter function with the Lambda functions. Now let's see how we can use one more function, which is called the reduce function. So in order to use the reduce function, we need to import a special module, which is functool. So let's import this module, and this module is called functools. So we are going to write from functool import reduce. So what we are basically saying is we need a reduce function from this functool module. And now you can use a reduce function. So I'm going to declare a variable e, and then I can use this reduce function, which also takes 2 arguments. One is the function and other is the iteratable collection. So let's define a function first of all, which is the Lambda function. And this Lambda function is going to take, let's say, 2 values, x and y. And what it's going to return is the sum of x plus y here. Now as the second argument, I'm going to pass my list variable here. So what a reduce function does is it takes first 2 elements of the list and then apply the function which you have written here, which is going to add first 2 elements, and then it's going to store the result in x variable and take next element into the y variable. So 7 plus y is going to give us whatever result, and once again it's going to apply the result and then going to add the next number to the result. So let's see what result we get using this reduce function. So I'm going to once again use print, and then we can directly print the value of the reduce function, which is e. So let's run this code once again, and you will see this result, which is 37. Now 37 is the sum of all these elements inside this my list. So let me explain you once again what this reduce function is doing. So first of all, because we are passing 2 arguments here in the Lambda function, it's going to take first 2 elements of your collection, which is 2 and 5, and then apply this code or statement to these 2 elements, which is 2 plus 5, and we will get 7 as the result. Now once again it's going to take 7 as the first argument, which is the sum of these 2 numbers, and 8 as the second argument, which is y here, and then apply this logic once again to 7 and 8, which gives us 15. And once again this 15 will be passed as x and 10 will be passed as y, and once again the addition of 15 and 10 will happen, which will make it 25, and so on. So this is how you can use Lambda functions in Python, and this is how you can use Lambda functions with map, filter and reduce functions. So I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video.